All right, now it's section 5, which is called A War Forever. This is a sort of continuation to some extent of the discussion before, where it is the understanding, the soldiers' understanding, basically, of these issues, of the way that time operates against them, for them. Time gives and time takes away, I guess, is sort of the moral of the story for them. And on 195, as Mandela becomes a commander, he says, I didn't know how realistic a picture they had, that is, the soldiers that are under him, of their future, their lack of future, that is. So by now, he is absolutely, he has no illusions left. And this is the situation of many, many veterans who have come through these kinds of brutal experiences, is that they sort of operate with no expectations, because they have essentially, in many ways, they have given up hope. And I used to understand that as being a negative thing, but I now feel very differently about that. I now feel that hope, like wishing, can make our lives enormously more complex and painful than they need to be. But we can have this conversation. So this is this. So Paul Fussell, who the guy I've been quoting you from, the Great War in Modern Memory, also, I mean, he's a soldier and he's a second lieutenant in World War II, and he serves in Europe, and they see enough. He sees enough stuff basically to make him. He comes out a very different person, and he fundamentally. I think he fundamentally feels, if you look at his autobiographies, that he comes out a better person. But good God, is he tough? I mean, in the sense that he's got this very hard ass way of looking at the world, but at the same time he's a very bright guy. So I gather this made him absolutely impossible to be around. I'm talking about Paul Fussell now, not Haldeman. Haldeman is a wonderful, warm, loving human being. Okay, so Fussell says, for every frontline soldier in the Second World War, there was the slowly dawning and dreadful realization that there was no way out. It was only a matter of time before they got killed or maimed or broke down completely. As one British officer put it, you go in, you come out, you go in again, and you keep doing it until they break you or you are dead. So when they talk about going in, they mean going into the line, and this is or to the front, we would now say, although we now have had 20 years nearly of frontless wars in both Afghanistan and Iraq, where the concept of a front is really, it doesn't hold in fourth generation warfare. The same is true in Vietnam. There really is no front. You keep going over the same territory repeatedly. That's the job. And this kind of repetition is what happens on page 168, where Mandela says, there's a new directive they didn't bother to tell us about before. The Sangha Victoria, so that's the blood and victory, right? Got orders for our 4 missions. We have to keep on fighting until we've done all 4, or until we've sustained so many casualties it wouldn't be practical to go on. And again, Paul Fussell is useful here talking about World War I in this case. And this is one of these thought experiments, because the people who were in the trenches weren't dumb. They figured out, they knew they were trapped in this crap show. And there was by 1917, the British officers, there were in the group of British officers who had good educations. I mean, these were bright people, spoke Latin and Greek, and they were the elite of the of Britain's youth. And this is the feeling specifically about World War I, was that it was a group of old men sending the youngest men to be killed. And in World War II, and Fussell certainly says this, was that effectively it was a class war where the upper classes, the classes who were the technocrats, the organizing classes, the people who were essentially in charge, were quite happy to send out the poor, in the American poor of any color, race, creed, whatever it was, as long as it wasn't theirs, and have them killed. Because basically it was, as far as they were like, well, whatever. I mean, it's like we're killing a bunch of poor people, poor white people. They're ignorant. Who cares? They're going to make more. There's going to be, and they did, right? I mean, that's the point. Everybody did. And that's what the population boom, and that is what the baby boom is about, right? Okay. So there was this group in the World War One British officers called the Never-Endians. You can imagine what they sounded like, and they calculated the way things had been going. So this is what Fussell says: they roughed out the area between the front of that date and the Rhine. So the idea was to get to the Rhine, because this would be the end of the war for the Germans. They'd be like, okay, that's it, we surrender. So wherever the front was, because the front largely stayed static. I mean, it's sort of, if you've seen their animations where they show you how the front moves over the course of 4 years, and initially there are these big moves, and then it settles in and it's static. I mean, that's the thing. Like World War II, the commanders were like, we don't ever want to fight that kind of static war again. We want to be on the move, and this brings about maneuver warfare. However, so you'll see that the line makes minor increments, small changes. It gains a bit and loses. So there's no difference. So the line would be somewhere in France, and so they were like, okay. So you look, what is the distance between the front there and the Rhine in Germany, right? And they divided this by the area gained on average at the Somme, Vimy, and Messines. So 3 massive battles. I mean, the Somme, 3 months, right, of steady bombardment and fighting, just daily, massive casualties every day. I am trying to remember. I think it's 50,000 casualties on the Somme in the first day. Vimy, of course, is famous in Canada, because this is where Canada is supposed to have become a world power, blah, because of Vimy Ridge, and we lost so many people, and okay, blah, blah, blah. And Messines. The result he multiplied by the time taken to prepare and fight those offensives, averaged again. The result he got was that, allowing for no setbacks, and providing the pace could be maintained, we should arrive at the Rhine in 180 years. So there's this, like I said, and then what? Like when you get there. So now, of course, this is the worst kind of forecasting. I mean, that's not how forecasting works, because you look at that and you say, well, all kinds of things will happen. The political will break in the country. People will refuse to fight. Somebody will develop a new weapon, which is what happened. I mean, the tanks were developed, and at the Battle of Cambrai in 1917, the tanks broke through and went so far that the infantry was like, what is this? And they couldn't keep up. I mean, the command was not ready for such a success. Okay.